The American dream or the world's most sophisticated con? What if the soap under your sink was part of a $1 billion pyramid? For decades, millions believed they were building businesses. But were they really just building someone else's fortune? Here is the most recent controversy on Amway worldwide. On April 18, 2022, a startling announcement rocked one of the world's largest direct selling companies. India's financial crime investigators froze nearly $95 million of Amway's assets, calling the business a pyramid fraud in the guise of direct selling.
The Enforcement Directorate has provisionally attached assets worth 750 crore rupees belonging to Amway India Enterprises.
To the public, Amway had long been sold as the quintessential American dream. Ordinary people were told they could become rich by becoming members of the company. But behind the glossy image of success and self-employment, authorities alleged a multi-level marketing scam built not on selling products, but on recruiting an endless chain of new members. Two friends, one basement, and a vision that would change the world, for better or for worse. In 1959, two school friends from Michigan, Rich DeVos and Jay Van Andel, launched a small venture that would eventually span over 100 countries. They called their company Amway, short for American Way, reflecting their grand vision of entrepreneurship for everyone. The pair had cut their teeth distributing a line of vitamin supplements called Nutrilite in the 1940s, learning the ropes of direct sales. Armed with that experience, they started Amway out of a basement, selling a single cleaning product and a big idea that anyone could succeed in business through hard work, faith, and a little help from friends and family. The pyramid in disguise. They said it was sales. Regulators called it recruitment. What set Amway apart was not the products, which included soaps, vitamins, cosmetics, and home goods, but how they were sold. Instead of traditional retail, Amway embraced a then-novel strategy, multi-level marketing. In this system, distributors are not just salespeople. They also recruit new distributors into their downline, forming a pyramid-shaped network of sellers. A new recruit buys inventory, often at staggeringly inflated prices, and is encouraged to sell products and bring in more recruits beneath them. Those recruits in turn bring in others and so on, with each level kicking commissions up to those above. The upline. The more people you recruit who keep the chain going, the more commission flows upward. By design, the founders created an endless chain of recruitment that flowed profits to the top of the pyramid. This was the American way that Amway touted, a system where a select few could get very rich by leveraging the efforts and investments of countless others below them. On paper, Amway presented itself as a straightforward direct sales company. Sell quality products, earn commissions, live the dream. In reality, its business structure was a convoluted hierarchy that all but guaranteed most people would lose. A new distributor pays a registration fee and buys inventory of Amway products. They are taught that success comes from recruiting others to join under them, more so than from selling soap or vitamins to customers. As early as 1975, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission observed that Amway distributors were focused on recruiting new people into the sales structure rather than selling products, often with dishonest promises of riches for those who join. This ethos remains at the core of the model. The structure expands geometrically down a pyramid. Commissions from product sales and mandatory purchases funnel upward. Each recruit's sales benefit their recruiter, their recruiter's recruiter, and so on. Very quickly, the market saturates and it becomes impossible for newer recruits at the bottom to find anyone left to join under them. They are stuck buying overpriced inventory with hopes of selling it, while those at the top reap bonuses. The products themselves, like detergents, supplements, and cosmetics, often cost significantly more than similar items in stores. The Indian Enforcement Directorate noted that high prices were set to masquerade this MLM pyramid fraud as a direct selling company, with products acting as a facade. In truth, many recruits weren't buying goods to use or retail at all. They were buying the dream of wealth. Amway's own training encouraged members to see each purchase as an investment in their business and in themselves rather than just soap for the sink. The tools of control. The real money wasn't in soap, it was in selling hope. At Amway rallies and seminars, success was glorified with evangelical fervor. High-ranking diamond distributors sold not just products, but motivation like books, CDs, seminars, even special voicemail subscriptions to their downlines at hefty prices. These tools were supposed to teach recruits how to succeed. In reality, they became a secondary scam, where top leaders profited by selling the idea of prosperity itself. It was not uncommon for eager recruits to spend thousands on conferences and materials, enriching their uplines while never turning an actual profit from product sales. This structure is what critics call inherently flawed by design. The vast majority of participants inevitably end up at the bottom of the pyramid. They can only make money by recruiting even more people below them, an impossible task to sustain forever. Without sustainable and profitable retail sales, the reward can come only from one place: the investments of later recruits. In other words, new money must constantly flow in from new recruits to pay those above, the hallmark of a pyramid scheme. Amway's genius was disguising this chain recruitment as a legitimate enterprise, draping it in the language of personal growth, faith, and entrepreneurship. For decades, Amway's leaders insisted their model was not a pyramid scheme, but a legal business opportunity. Yet evidence of fraud and deception has shadowed the company almost from the start. In the 1970s, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission investigated Amway for being an inherent fraud, noting that the company's endless chain of recruitment doomed most consumers to losses. In 1979, after years of legal battles, Amway narrowly avoided being shut down. Regulators allowed it to continue operating but imposed rules like buyback policies for unsold inventory to curb the worst abuses. Amway's lawyers touted this as a victory, and the company swiftly adapted its tactics to comply on paper while essentially keeping its money-making engine intact. As author Robert Fitzpatrick put it, Amway simply reframed the pyramid as a legitimate business opportunity called direct selling, continuing to compel each distributor to make monthly purchases and recruit others to do the same. This clever pivot bought Amway decades more to grow and to spread its model worldwide, even as consumer advocates warned that nothing had really changed. The numbers don't lie. The odds of success worse than roulette in Las Vegas. Over the years, whistleblowers and researchers amassed damning data on Amway's outcomes. In case after case, the pattern was the same. The overwhelming majority of distributors lost money or made only trivial incomes, while a tiny few at the top prospered. A UK government inquiry in 2008 found that out of 33,000 Amway distributors in Britain, only about 90 made enough profit to even cover their business costs, a success rate of roughly 0.27%. In 2011, an analysis by the Consumer Awareness Institute calculated that over 99.9% of Amway recruits eventually lose money when business expenses are taken into account. These numbers are staggeringly bleak. By comparison, a game of roulette in Las Vegas offers far better odds of coming out ahead than an Amway business. Failure was not a bug in the system, it was the system. As one former high-level distributor turned whistleblower, Eric Scheibler, revealed in his exposé, Merchants of Deception, even Amway's own top brass had long been aware that their scheme was virtually impossible for newcomers to profit from. The company, Scheibler showed, thrived by swindling ordinary people with dreams that it knew the vast majority could never achieve. Some of the red flags were hiding in plain sight. Amway's charismatic co-founder, Rich DeVos, famously preached that those who really want to succeed, and the others didn't try hard enough. This convenient bit of ideology laid the blame for failure on the individual, never on the system, even as virtually everyone was failing. In truth, those who really want to succeed could only do so if hundreds beneath them failed. a fact illustrated by independent expert studies and even some court cases. Consumer advocates like Fitzpatrick have bluntly called multi-level marketing a global fraud perpetrated on consumers. For years, however, Amway used its immense wealth and influence to stave off serious repercussions. The billion-dollar warning. In the end, the billionaires themselves proved the critics right. The starkest proof of Amway's lopsided promise lies in who got rich from it. By the 1990s and 2000s, thousands of Amway rank-and-file independent business owners were quitting each year in frustration, but the men who started it all were flying high. Richard DeVos and Jay Van Andel became two of the richest men in America, their families joining the ranks of billionaires. DeVos in particular, who died in 2018, was lauded in some circles as a self-made philanthropist. But as one obituary put it, this right-wing billionaire should be remembered for pioneering the cruel pyramid scheme Amway and profiting from fraud and deception. He and Van Andel had built a global empire on the backs of millions of hopeful recruits who ultimately saw little to no reward. Perhaps sensing the fragility of their enterprise's reputation, the Amway founders and top diamonds cultivated a cult-like aura to bind their followers. Amway mass meetings were likened to religious revivals. The founders injected evangelical Christian rhetoric into business, framing wealth as proof of righteous living and God's favor. One distributor recalled how every high-level seller acknowledged the Lord for their success. This blending of faith and free market ideology wasn't just window dressing. It served to motivate salespeople far beyond the scope of their actual earnings or realistic prospects. In essence, Amway was selling hope, community, and a quasi-religious belief in the system, even if the system was stacked against the average participant. As sociologists noted, Amway mastered the art of harnessing these ideologies to motivate individual salespersons far beyond their realistic prospects of success. By doing so, the company could keep people in the fold longer, chasing the dream and buying more tools and products, even when profits didn't materialize. All the same, the opulent lifestyles of those at the top were on full display, proof that somebody was winning. At Amway's conventions, super wealthy mentors would flaunt their lavish lifestyle on stage to inspire the crowds. Luxury cars, mansions, and even private jets were presented as achievable rewards if one just kept believing and recruiting. In reality, those prizes were effectively bait. They were funded by the losses of thousands below. As the Indian investigators later observed, the entire focus of the company is about propagating how members can become rich. There is no focus on the products. The founders turned billionaires had unwittingly become Exhibit A in the case against Amway. Their extreme wealth was only possible because so many others had paid into the system and failed. This discrepancy, enormous riches at the top, losses for almost everyone else, is exactly what one would expect from a pyramid fraud, not a legitimate open opportunity. Amway's veneer of legitimacy began to crumble as more governments and media scrutinized its practices. The company had already seen legal troubles, for instance. Amway's India CEO was arrested in 2013 and 2014 on fraud charges related to the pyramid structure. But the watershed moment came with that sweeping 2022 action in India. In a very public denunciation, investigators laid out how Amway was inducing the gullible public with promises of wealth, while products are just used to masquerade an illegal pyramid scheme. They revealed financial figures. Over nearly 2 decades, Amway India had collected about $3.4 billion from members, but paid out only a fraction of that in commissions. The rest vanished into corporate coffers and upline bonuses. It was a shell game on a massive scale, and the law was finally catching up. The company's response was telling. Rather than disproving the allegations, Amway pleaded that a misleading impression of its business would affect the livelihood of over 550,000 Indian distributors. In the end, the billionaires themselves became the unwitting whistleblowers of their scheme. By achieving such outlandish riches, they drew attention to the imbalance and injustice at the heart of Amway's model. The final question: Was Amway the American way, or the biggest pyramid game the world has ever seen?